Brace yourself. Tariff-driven price increases are no longer a distant threat. They're here, and they're hitting everyday products first. But here's where it gets controversial. While some argue these tariffs protect domestic industries, many consumers are already feeling the pinch at the checkout counter. So what's really going on? Throughout much of 2025, experts predicted that the sweeping tariffs introduced by the Trump administration would cause inflation to surge. Surprisingly, for a while, those fears didn't materialize. However, recent economic reports reveal that this temporary calm is ending, with tariffs now clearly pushing prices upward. In August, the Consumer Price Index, CPI, climbed by 2.9% compared to the previous year, marking a faster inflation rate than the month before. This uptick coincides with the gradual impact of President Trump's tariffs spreading through the economy. Notably, goods heavily reliant on imports experienced some of the sharpest price increases. This inflation rate is the highest since January, when Trump began his second term. The tariffs were initially announced in April, on what Trump dubbed Liberation Day. But their rollout was delayed as the administration negotiated new trade agreements with several countries. This delay gave U.S. businesses a window to prepare for the new import taxes, which are paid directly by American companies to the federal government. Faced with the prospect of steep tariff costs, many U.S. companies rushed to stockpile imported goods and components, temporarily avoiding the need to raise prices for consumers. Others chose to absorb these additional expenses themselves, hoping to maintain customer loyalty. But now, according to the Federal Reserve's latest Beige Book survey, which gathers insights from businesses, economists, and other sources, these strategies are losing steam. Tariff-related price hikes became evident across the country in August. Beth Hammack, president and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, recently told CBS News that companies experiencing squeezed profit margins are increasingly forced to pass these tariff costs on to consumers. Several major retailers and manufacturers have already announced price increases linked to tariffs, including home improvement giant Home Depot, department store Macy's, and camera manufacturer Nikon. Gregory Dacko, chief economist at EY Parthenon, explains, "The pass-through of tariffs to consumer prices happens gradually because some businesses initially absorb more of the costs. However, there's a limit to how long they can do this, so we expect more companies to start raising prices for customers." Meanwhile, the White House maintains that inflation remains under control and credits Trump's policies with strengthening the economy. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt told CBS Money Watch, since President Trump took office, the CPI has been tracking at a 2.3% annualized rate, which is consistent with low and stable inflation. Leavitt also pointed to recent data showing a decline in wholesale inflation and emphasized that ongoing private sector investments, historic tax cuts, deregulation, and energy dominance under Trump's leadership are fueling an economic boom. But let's look closer at the tariff-driven price hikes hitting consumers now. The latest CPI report highlights significant price jumps in many imported goods. Take coffee, for example. Since the U.S. can only grow coffee beans in limited areas like Hawaii and Puerto Rico, about 80% of unroasted coffee beans are imported, mainly from Latin America, with Brazil as the top supplier. Due to a 50% tariff on Brazilian imports, U.S. consumers are paying for guidance. Consumers paid 21% more for coffee beans in August compared to a year earlier. Other imported products experiencing notable price increases over the past year include audio equipment up 12%, household furniture up 10%, bananas up 6.6%, women's dresses up 6.2%, watches up 5.6%, motor vehicle parts up 3.4%. This rise in prices comes at a tough time, as wage growth is slowing, putting extra pressure on lower-income families. Heather Lawn, chief economist at Navy Federal Credit Union, expressed concern. "It's alarming that so many essential items, food, gas, clothing, and housing, saw significant price increases in August. And this is just the beginning. Prices are expected to climb further as more costs are passed on to consumers. Clara Moore, a 44-year-old public sector researcher from Newark, New Jersey, shared her experience with CBS Money Watch. She's noticed prices rising everywhere, with her grocery bills jumping from about $175 a year ago to roughly $250 now. Many economists predict tariffs will continue to drive inflation higher for the rest of the year, adding financial strain on households. This is likely to make consumers more cautious with their spending. Gregory Dacko notes, people haven't stopped spending altogether, but they're becoming more selective, adjusting their purchases based on what they truly need and what they can afford. Moore has already started cutting back on non-essential expenses. I'm canceling all my streaming services and have stopped impulse buying on Amazon, she said. Ryan Sweet, chief U.S. economist at Oxford Economics, estimates that consumers will end up shouldering about 2/3 of the cost increases from new tariffs on imported goods. You'll see these price hikes spread out over several months, with more tariffs passed on to shoppers, he explained. So here's the big question. Are these tariffs a necessary tool to protect American jobs and industries, or are they an unfair burden on everyday consumers struggling to make ends meet? And what about the long-term effects? Will these price increases force companies to innovate and source domestically, or simply squeeze household budgets tighter? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with the administration's approach? Or do you think tariffs are doing more harm than good? Share your opinions in the comments below, and join the conversation.